Hi, everyone. Welcome to Beacons of Balance. We're here today. This is my wonderful co-host, Joanne, and we have two special guests that I'll introduce, Joanne will introduce shortly. Join us every Wednesday. We are here to share with everyone and to help everyone with different insights to help us get through this crazy, hectic lives that we live here, right? So today's going to be fun, right, Joanne?
Oh my God, I'm more excited about this one than any other one.
It's going to be a fun one, yeah.
This will be fun.
An important component to all of our lives, to all of the world. It connects us all. And that's what we're all about. So we'll introduce Victor Avellino. You've heard us talk. He's our tech angel. He's our IT person, and he has a lot of other talents. And Joanne,
Oh my gosh, my amazing son, Bob Macko, who has been playing since he came out of the womb. I swear to God, he knew what his calling was.
He was playing.
We're excited to interview both you. And Victor, wow, he's our angel for sure. Can't do this podcast without Victor.
He has a lot of patience with us, especially.
Oh my God.
Just like this much.
So he is a saint.
Yeah. I don't know how you do it, Victor. I wouldn't have the patience.
So both Bob and Victor are talented musicians. They're writers, composers. They have their own music, all different genres, and we'll get into that. And music is for the soul. It affects everyone, right? We have that beat that we come in with. It's our heart. They call it a heartbeat. It's the drum, is the boom, boom, boom. So we are living instruments, right, guys? So my first question to both of you, and you could take it either way, whichever way. When did you actually get interested in music, and how did it all begin? Was it through listening to somebody, or you just had an instrument, or you wanted to learn?
So I think my exposure to music started really young, and it was actually through my dad, who used to play acoustic guitar for us when we were really little, myself and my brother.
Wow.
And I remember at a very early age, he used to sit down with us and he'd be playing little nursery rhyme songs like Teddy Bear Picnic and whatnot on the acoustic guitar. And that's something that always kind of stuck with me. Even though I didn't get into music until a little bit later on in life, that was kind of my first real introduction that, oh, people actually make music and it's not just something that magically spits out of the car radio when you're driving down the highway. So that was my first memory. And
I never knew your dad had that talent.
Yeah. I also play the polka accordion and
I was gonna say,
organ.
did he play the accordion? Because of his
Yeah. And we actually still have that thing too. It's crazy. It's decked out in all this pearloid filigrees and stuff, and actually kind of converted it over. It's like a Middle Eastern harmonium kind of instrument later on.
My uncle had one. They would of course drink, and then he'd bring it out and be nee.
I tried throwing that thing out so many times, Bob. You have no idea, but Dad always like touching it.
Yeah. How about you, Victor? How'd you get involved in music?
Well, it was kind of a brute force thing for me. Music was always something that I really loved. I always knew. I loved movies and film and music and I loved all the creation and the emotion that was just. I didn't know what I felt at the time. I was maybe like 5 or 6 years old, but I was watching MTV all the time. So I was watching a lot of TV as a kid, and it was either MTV or the Sci-Fi Channel, and it was a lot of alien abductions at the time. So I knew two things. I knew I loved music, and I knew that aliens existed and that I was going to get abducted as a child. Needless to say, I'm an anxious person. Anyway, so my family, they appreciated and enjoyed my abilities in music and the arts. I did a lot of music theater and acting as well growing up. But really, I didn't really get to start playing. I wanted to play the violin when I was 6, but didn't really get a chance. But then 8, my school had everybody choose an instrument. You could either be in the choir or you could choose an instrument. So all the boys were choosing the drums and the horns and the this and the that. And I was like, oh, there's no male flautist. And I'm always like, I want to do the thing opposite of everybody else. So I'm like, I'm going to play the flute. And my mom rented a flute. And on the way home, I just figured out how to put it together and figured out the correct embouchure to get an actual resonant sound out of it. on the way home, and she was like, huh. So that started things, but then moved on. I was able to find my mom's old nylon string guitar in the attic when I was like 12 or 13. A friend of mine gave me a bass, and then I just started teaching myself. And basically, because it was always like, that's great that you can do music. That's great, but you also need to live in the real world, and you got to grow up. And I said, screw that. And eventually, I dropped out of college and became a full-time musician. But I just, through the years, music just made sense to me. It's all, I like to say I have robot brain. So it's all like the math and the patterns and the algorithms, and my ear just can pick things up. Like I still to this day, I'm still trying to teach myself how to read music. I can hear these advanced jazz harmonies, but I literally cannot tell you what they are. I would have to sit and plug them on a piano. And I'm literally at almost 40, I'm like going back to the basics of music theory and all of these things because I'm trying to compose these more complex things that I've heard in my head my whole life, but finally I'm starting to have the vocabulary to do them. But
That's a good point. It's a good point you
Yeah.
brought up about reading and not. Do you read music, Bob? Do you do both, or is it more just natural from your ear?
So I'm actually in the similar position as Victor. I'm a self-trained musician as well. And I've never traditionally gone through and learned sheet music and sight reading and all that kind of stuff. I've had collectively over, 30 years of performance, maybe 2 courses of music theory and 1 group piano lesson, and that was it.
Yeah,
So
that
I
just-
pick up everything by ear and, similar. I can follow patterns. I hear all these rhythms and, pockets and sequences and things like that. And I can identify them immediately when I'm listening to things on the radio. I can hear sound samples that one artist used on the radio that I might have in my library and know exactly where it came from. And so I could dissect music. And it's a fun approach to that because you have a different understanding of how things are built and structured and how composers
That's
kind of
really
get into the
interesting
field.
because my husband plays bass and he's played since he was like 13, and he's really senior now. But he doesn't read, but he could pick up anything as you guys and join in. I mean, we were I forget where we were, Asia, and we were going through a place and some guy was playing some funky instrument, and he went in there and he played it in front of all these people. I'm like, holy shit! But
That's a gift. Yeah.
he couldn't get into an orchestra to play because they have to read the sheet music. So he
Yeah.
could,
Right.
Well, sometimes it's more advantageous to just sort of learn by listening and learn by learning songs, because sometimes when you are raised in the academic environment, and I know this from friends who were, it becomes much harder to break out of that. Whereas people such as Bob and myself, we don't really know what rules to break. We just know what sounds right. Somebody
Exactly.
on YouTube might break down something what we did and be like, oh, they're going from this mode to this and these borrowed chords to then jump to this thing or blah blah blah, whatever the hell it is. But we're just like, it just friggin' sounds good.
Bob, you played so many different kinds of music, anything from deep relaxation, hypnosis, music for that crowd. This is my question for both of you. Like, what's your favorite genre of music? And was there any particular musician that really inspired you?
For me, music kind of represents all phases of life. And every single person has ups and downs. They have highlights of their life. They have the low spots. They have their shadow and struggle periods of life. And so for me, every single instrument kind of taps into those different aspects of your soul. So that way, we're multifaceted beings. We express a lot of different emotions through reliving our past, whether we realize it or not. So when you have the ability to connect to possibly the more spiritual side and you pick up a Native American flute, that speaks to that. It's beautiful and haunting and enchanting. However, like when you need some sort of like cathartic release, you're angry, life is just beating you up. Sometimes you need to plug into a, full stack and crank the amp up to 11 and melt the paint off the wall. That's the human experience, right?
I feel like that question for me is almost like asking a painter, like, what's your favorite paintbrush or what's your favorite color or something like that. Because yeah, Bob, like you were saying, it's a tool of expression, and especially after living and playing professionally in Nashville for 10 years and then being in studios and just being a sideman and realizing that like and just hearing so many times, especially like the best wisdom, especially when you're recording a song or playing live or whatever, is just what is most in service to the song, what is most in service to the emotion that you're trying to evoke or the thing that you're trying to give. So it's like, yeah, if I'm trying to create a specific emotion or empathize with someone, then this would be my favorite genre for that. And it's the same thing when people ask me what my favorite instrument is. I mean, I play most stringed instruments. I've got whatever. If I turn this around, you'd see nothing but instruments in here of all different kinds. Basically, it's more just about what's going to be the best emotion, the best tool to evoke the emotion or paint an oral picture for somebody. You know, it's like even the modes themselves, they evoke different emotions. So it's like if I'm trying to evoke a certain emotion, I'll use this mode as opposed to this one. It's almost like the major scale is happy. So if I want somebody to feel kind of happy and positive, I would use a major scale. The minor scale, and I mean, I'm very simplifying it a lot, but the minor scales, they say it sounds more sad. So a lot of times more sad songs or more like intimate songs, they can be more of those sort of darker tones. So it's just all what's best. So it's all my favorite, really. If it's a good, if it makes me see or feel something, then it's doing its job, you know.
Well, so Victor, you did mention that I know you were in Nashville for a number of years.
Mhm.
Oh, Bob, you've played a lot for different. What type of events and things do you guys play at and have played at? And have you introduced some major people?
So yeah, I mean, I performed all over the place. I've been performing semi-professionally since I was 16 years old. I've done so many different kinds of gigs. I've performed in different festivals. I've done shows out as far as Seattle. I've done recording studios. I performed at some bizarre places. I think the strangest one I've performed at like a natural history museum where a backdrop was a stuffed giraffe. Um, but we've also performed in front of multiple thousands of people and have opened up the doors for some well-known acts. For a while, we were also performing kind of with the Celebrate Your Life circuit. So we were able to open up for Greg Braden and other people that were in the spiritual authors zone.
Hmm. And Victor?
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting.
Yeah.
And Victor?
Nashville was a lot of touring and a lot of long days downtown, and then sometimes being in the studio. But really, studio gigs, you kind of already have to be in. And I'm a bit of, like I even said with the flute, I'm a little bit of like everybody's doing this. I don't really want to do that. I'm gonna go this way and figure out my own thing. So I did some session work, but it was mostly live gigs, songwriting, playing in bands. I was mostly, I just called myself a musical mercenary, just a hired gun side man. The longer I was there, like when I first moved to Nashville, I didn't know how to really play like bass or lap steel or resonator or banjo or, you know, some of the more, you know, country instruments. It was a lot of like playing doubles, triples downtown where you'll have like 2, 3, 4 days a week where you'll play at one bar from like 10 to 2. And then you'll play to the next bar from 2 to 6. And then you'll play the next bar from 6 to 10. Or you'll have like a break in between one and then go from like 10 to 2 again. So you'll do like 3. And most of those gigs are like 3 to 4 hour gigs. And a lot of them, you don't really get a bathroom break. You just got to like throw off your instrument and be like, does this one not require bass? Okay, great. I'm going to go pee. And it was a lot of backwoods gigs because I played for, let's just say a lot of C and D level sort of country artists. You know, no offense to them. I'm just using the kind of Hollywood terms of like where they are from a fame standpoint. It is, like I said before, even growing up, it's always had to be kind of a brute force thing. I won't get into it, but my own life itself, experiences have caused has caused the ability to do things that I want to be very challenging. And it's always been something that it's just, I have to create. I have to make something beautiful. whether or not it's music, film, or anything. That's just what I have to do. And so, I wanted to get those opportunities, but also I had my own issues too. And frankly, I'm glad that I did not achieve massive success. And I think I'm taking this from Mark Maron. I heard him say this one time, but because I would have messed it all up because I was not ready at the time to have that. And I maybe my own, higher, connections and angels kind of knew that and knew that I needed all of that time and those experiences playing for other people to understand what I want to be able to create for myself. And now I'm in my own woodshed in the woods creating what I want to create.
And you're still young. So
Yeah.
you have a lot of years ahead.
No, it's not. It's
Both
not.
young.
There's no age limit on doing whatever the hell you want to do.
Look at Grandma Moses.
Right.
No.
I watched over the years how many years we've done light workers for some 25 years. And Bob, it always amazed me the effect on the audience that your music would have. I'd be turning around, the whole audience is on the floor, and you and Sven would be playing music instruments over them. Can you both get into how music affects the body? I know you would use rain sticks, and you would literally work over their chakras, and you would just see a transformation with people. Do you want to address that first, Bob, and then we'll go to
Yeah,
Victor?
for sure. So what we're talking about here is something that's called sound healing, basically using sound and vibration to have a physiological impact on people. So this has been documented centuries and centuries ago. So civilizations and cultures going all the way back to the Knights Templar and the Aboriginals, they use sound instruments not only to tell stories and pass down traditions through sound, but to also clear and heal them from ailments and physical issues. So there's this study that's called cymatics, which is kind of like a vibratory scientific explanation of how sound moves through matter. And if you do a little quick YouTube search on this, you'll find an incredible rabbit hole of information, how sound and frequency impacts our body and actually has the power of shifting cells and ultimately creating different levels of chemical production in the body. So when you have the right kind of frequencies, notes and patterns of frequencies, it's literally a blueprint of redesigning your body for optimal health. And that's something that my previous musical partner and I started getting into during our performances.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd be using different sound wave generators, tuning forks, and other things to create these live visuals. And we would have a projection screen behind us that would show in real time what these waveforms look like, called a cymatic generator. And that way people who are more like
Those things are
scientific
so cool.
minded, they could actually see how it's like shaping sacred geometry based upon the different sounds, notes, and chords that we're shifting through during the performance. So, oh my God, there's such a crazy history with this. Like back in the Knights Templar era, they actually carved these patterns of these sacred geometries from these sound waves into what's called music boxes in the ceiling of the Rosslyn Chapel. So they actually hid secret combinations of notes and sounds into the masonry of their sacred buildings, and also instructed you where to stand inside that building where the frequencies would converge into a harmonic resonance point. It's wild. So we started using some of that for our performances, and it's been a pretty fun experience.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's
Yeah.
freaking cool.
Wow.
And Victor,
We've had speakers talk about that who have been to that Rosalind Chapel. Remember when Ben did a whole thing on that? It's just amazing. So cymatics, we could do a whole show on just cymatics.
cymatics, let me tell you, because when I had my store, I used to bring people in from all over. I had a guy, Jeff Bulk. There's a big book I have, Cymatics. I was trying to get a hold of him for the show. I don't know what happened to him. But he came in and spoke about that. And Hans Jenny is really the father of it, I believe. And the patterning with the sand, when they do a vibration plate and the pattern it forms, and it just goes to like Dr. Emoto with the water. and when you put words and sounds to it, how it patterns.
Right.
Victor, anything? Vic, do you want to say anything about that? How it affects people you've
Well,
or
so just remind me what the original question was. I was captivated by everything Bob was saying.
And we were just talking about how different sound affects, people in different ways.
Yeah, I will. So I'll preface with the fact that really everything in my life, and I've found myself, the more that I've been leaning on this, the more that things just kind of are okay, even when it's just a cavalcade of chaos around, is intuition. I've always had a strong intuition. And for me, it's all about feeling. And there's just sort of like this it's almost like a resonant electric rain that kind of goes on, this synesthesia sort of thing, when like I know it's the right thing that hits, it's the right chords or the right melody. There's just always a gut instinct. If somebody gives me a skeleton, I can be like, I see what you're trying to say and what you're trying, and then I can help weave the whole tapestry of the story to affect someone else. Music for me has been very important. Music has saved me more times than once. Even though I can, especially when I'm talking about a topic, I can verbalize and vocalize well, but when I'm discussing things about myself or feelings or emotions and things like that, I can sometimes have issues expressing myself in that way. So music a lot of times has been the only way. Music and acting and even comedy too, it's been the only way that I've been able to connect with the world in a way that actually feels true. Like it feels real, it feels free, and there's a solidarity in that truth and the piece of that feeling. And I've had I've had some hard times, and I've used it to express all the things that I feel. Actually, I only recently, really, since the pandemic, I finally started getting serious about trying to compose and focus on composing on the piano and strings. And the first piece that I wrote was a piece about grieving my father. He passed back in 2015. And the first time I played it, I had a composition instructor, Marcin Bella, who's in Nashville. He's incredible. He also does a lot of spiritual based sound healing music. So he's definitely somebody I recommend checking out. Actually, Bob, he would be somebody great for you to get in contact with. I should get you his info. But he showed me a few things with composition, and I wrote that first piece. And he had this parlor style events where it was just in somebody's home with this beautiful upright piano. There was maybe about 20 of us. I performed it for the first time, and everyone there was crying. And like I never expected that. And I'm not proud of that. I'm like, yeah, I want to make people cry, but it's about evoking emotion. For me, it's about like a song is the person you're laughing with, the person you're celebrating with, a shoulder for you to cry on, somebody to give you a hug when you're grieving, someone to feel and know your loss, even if it's completely different. The human spectrum of emotion is the same. And whether or not it's one thing or the other, the emotions felt in those two different situations are the same. And that can bring us out of a lot of holes. I mean, music helped me stop, myself from taking my own life, and has, at times of that sorrow and pain and just not wanting to be here anymore and all of those things, it went into the song. And so it's important because a lot of people can't just journal. A lot of people, and a lot of times lyrics are hard for me, but I can write a symphony and you will feel all of the seasons of emotions. But if somebody who can't speak, they can still say what they need to say.
well, the music touches the soul. When I had my angel shop and I used to do angel circles, and I was, a news station came over and they said, we want you to do your circle. I used to take an hour and they said, well, you have 20 minutes. I go, oh my God, how am I going to do this? But I did it and I had a circle, and I had the people, there were men and women. And I always end with the song, as you know, I do at my healing, when I'm in prayer each month. But it was to Shana Knowles. It's like lullaby thing, but it's how could anyone ever tell you anything less than beautiful?
Oh, yeah.
Held hand.
Popular song then.
Now this is a newscaster. She's crying. Everybody's crying. So, I mean, it was pretty amazing. She was almost late. She had to go run to the station to air that day. And she goes, I'm almost late getting there. So it's really, yeah.
Powerful.
I want to touch off on, and this is going to expound more about it. I don't know how much you guys know or if you've worked with geriatrics, because there is a known thing where music for healing. And I know Victor, you caretake an elderly grandfather and he's Italian. And I know you've mentioned you play the Italian music for him.
The old Napolitano songs.
Yeah. And they have this, I know there's music theory, music therapy, where people in nursing homes, they can't use their walker. They're falling over it. They don't know how to play. So they play music and they have them walk and they walk to the beat and they learn how to use their walker. But there's stories also where people are in wheelchairs, Alzheimer, dementia. They're like, I don't want to say zombies, but they're really out of it. And they'll play something from their era that they lived in that period of time, and they'll get up. It's like,
well, I'll
get up.
well, let me tell you, Arlene, one of the gigs that I do out these days is I perform for elderly at some senior living facilities. And specifically, one of them is called Bridges, but that's the memory ward. So I was playing at Christmas Eve. There was this one at the memory ward for the dementia and Alzheimer patients, or people living there, I should say. This one guy, I just started playing this one song, and he got up and he started dancing. Typically, he's a curmudgeon, and he never wants to move around, and he was just so happy. And it really does have an incredible effect. And even with my grandfather, I knew, him being 90 and, signs of some, cognitive decline are there. And, things like touch, company, and music are extremely, extremely important for, sort of decreasing that cognitive decline. And it's very powerful. And even to see after I installed a few things for my grandfather, have music playing every day, it was a night and day difference with his daily life quality. And so it's more, it is, to me, music is a necessary part of life. Anyone that goes like, oh, I don't like music, that's not a thing. Like, that's not part of you, like, no offense. Actually, I don't care. A part of you is dead. If you just could say like, oh, I don't like music. What do you mean you don't like? That's not, no. I'm going to go on a rant. I'm very opinionated. I'm not going to do that.
Oh my God.
Victor, you're going to edit yourself out. But
I'm going to edit the hell out of myself.
This is an important piece for the audience to hear, because the population is aging. Not us included.
Not us. Never us.
It's very important for people that do have elderly folks to keep, play music for them, because it does it stimulates the brain. It keeps it going, It's important and to have movement. People, it's funny, Victor, you said that you play at, these assisted living. Well, that's what Fred does now too.
Yeah.
He's up in that age bracket now. But anyways, but even when he played when he was young, and he would question himself by what was he playing? Is it doing any, you know what I mean? Because a lot of times you're playing a gig, as you guys know, and people be talking over, or, it depends what type of genre you're playing. But
that's every gig.
Yeah. He said he would look out in the audience and he would connect. He would see people if they were tapping their foot or hum, you know what I mean, or swaying. He knows that there was that connection. So that's something.
I think it's interesting. Like, when Bob was living with us, every day he would come in with some odd instrument that no one's ever heard of. Or Bob, I don't know where you find these things. I swear to God, like a Vietnamese water harp or some odd looking thing.
Awesome.
And then you used to make your own instruments. I think you were playing 13 instruments at one time. What was your favorite go-to instrument? I'll ask both of this. For Bob, what was your favorite go-to instrument?
Favorite go-to instrument is probably the guitar, just because it's the most versatile, not just because of the instrument by itself, but it allows me to pass through this insanely large guitar effects pedal board that I've created.
Okay.
And I've got something like 30 or 32 different pedals on this thing. It's like 4 foot wide. It's hooked up to computers and MIDI controllers and all sorts of stuff. So within this one machine, I can create any soundscape imaginable. I can loop and sample and record things live in real time. I can play things back, and I can make a beautiful sound healing environment with like nature backgrounds, or I can make something that's more, aggressive and rock and roll and everything else in between.
Any instrument for you, Victor? Special?
An instrument for me really is the piano, but I guess a keyboard, because I have a lot of virtual instruments, a lot of really great libraries of instruments. So really, whatever I want to capture, whatever sound I'm hearing, I can make it. I do love the guitar as well for the same reason. There's an emotion that you can get out of it, especially with all of the different tools and effects and everything. You can get all of the emotions. You can just, it's a very versatile tool. But for me, especially with composing and liking to compose for multiple instruments, I do like to start at the piano. But the piano is always the one I go to first before anything else. I love jazz harmony and just really like rich, like jazz and neo soul especially. So the piano is much better, at least for me, with what I like to do with a lot of those weird, they call them crunchy chords. Like it's just a whole lot of extra notes and like a 6 fingers coming out of your, the side of you and like hitting another note too. Like you're using your foot to like hit the piano. You're not, but
So I know this is kind of, we already touched on this, but how does music, or whatever you guys listen to or whatever, how does it affect your life, and how does it bring you, since our show is on balance, bringing us back to our center? How has that helped you, or what do you go to for yourselves to bring you back to that center?
For me, music has been such an integral part of my life ever since I was a young kid. How it brings me back to my center, it really depends on the day and what's going on. A while ago, I actually made this little project called the Music Life Project, where I decided to find a song that represented every single year of my life. So I'd actually find something that would feel like it represented my life from 0 to 1, and another song from 1 to 2, 3 to 4, etc., all the way up till I was, 30 or something, and I kind of lost track of it. But then you can see when you play back to it in a playlist how your life was sculpted, and how like you can feel the parts that empowered you, the parts where, I was going through a dark time and this really resonated with me. So sometimes I can listen to one of those songs on the radio that would just fire on, and suddenly I'm like warped instantaneously back to the time I was 15 or whatever.
Yeah.
So sometimes playing something like that brings me back to center.
Yeah.
But because I'm a musician, it's really easy for me just to pick up anything, play something completely zen out, and then, the whole world melts away, and there I am with these frequencies. So recently, that's my kind of go-to.
That's great. Victor?
Yeah, music is just, it's life's soundtrack. It's what makes things interesting, even, you look at like binaural beats and things like that, especially me with some of my weird brain issues. I'll use a lot of binaural beats and sounds and brown noise to actually help with focus and meditation. it's your best friend. It's your confidant. It's whatever that song is. It's just, it's everything for whatever moment that you need it to be. And it's exactly what you need to be in whatever that song is.
I love that. That's great. Put that as a quote. That's great.
Amazing. I know every night before I go to sleep, I always play 528 hertz,
Mhm.
you know, and there's something to that. It's where those binaural beats, you know, as Victor said, are very, very important. But you're both so talented, and I'm so blessed. And Arlene and
you.
I are just beyond grateful to have both of you on at the same time.
I know we talked about this. It's great that
Wow.
it happened.
Can you imagine if these two collaborated? Oh my God,
Yeah.
I can't even, because I've listened to Victor's music and I literally brought me to tears. And Bob, when you play that haunting melody on the keyboard, I'm bawling. It's like, so there's something, you guys have such a gift. And, you know, beyond your music, I mean, I've got Bob's photography behind me, some of his CDs here. Victor, I know you, I'm sure you do something beyond music. You're probably a great photographer as well, you know, and an artist. Because it never stops with just music, you know that.
No,
Each of us here are creative. I mean, that's what we're together. We each have our own.
you know, music. Well, you know, we can talk about music in regards to the universal consciousness. Just like a lot of ideas or anything else, you know, somebody has an idea and then 6 months later, you're like, I thought of that. Well, there have been times in my life where I have a melody or a line and I'm like, I wrote that song first, but I didn't. But it's just, there is a universal consciousness to it. But you know, this is a quote from Stephen King with writing, from On Writing, but I think it also applies here. Stephen King, when he writes, he says he's not creating the story, he's discovering a fossil. And as he chisels it away, the fossil kind of just reveals itself as he goes on. And you know, and also like the idea of like the muse calls to those who are working. If you are sitting there and writing the music, then like I do believe it's almost like a breeze of melody or a breeze of inspiration from the greater muses that you might hear or are able to capture. And if you don't, then it will move on to someone else. Because if a song needs to be written and a song needs to be out there, just like anything else, it will eventually come out, whether it sounds the way you wanted it to or not. It's still going to be there.
Well, I believe music, as I opened with, it connects everyone. It connects the world. You know, it doesn't matter what race, what whatever you are. You know, when you play something, no one has to speak, but everybody's feeling it. And we're the instrument. Our voices, when I went to a workshop, I forget who said, our voice box is sacred geometry. It vibrates to get our tone out, you know, and it's so important to do, you know.
Not only that, but the inner ear of the cochlea is actually shaped like a perfect Fibonacci spiral, right?
Yeah.
So when we're hearing sound and it's coming into us, it's actually being shaped around into sacred geometry before it's actually encoded by our brain.
Yeah.
And there have also been interesting studies on the whole frequency and how we've tuned instruments in this society. Typically, most instruments in this era are tuned to A440, which means that the A is tuned to 440 hertz, right? But most people that have delved into sacred sound and vibration, they've also found out that that inner ear is not actually tuned to resonate at A440.
Wow.
It actually resonates at 442.
Huh.
Right? Actually 432, sorry.
Yeah, and sometimes some people, and I've done this before too, where you'll change your tuner and just go up a couple cents, and especially with like, sometimes with orchestral things, or like occasionally it'll just feel a little better. And I don't know if it's because we've heard this before and that's subconsciously already there or not, but you know, but then again, of course, it's a huge debate, because the mathematical theory guys can be like, well, mathematically this is specifically this, but there are so many examples throughout history, like Bob was saying, of just that there's other frequencies, there's other modes of tuning.
Yeah. So way back in the day, they actually started tuning instruments in the Baroque era at like 415 or something. Not because that sounded right to them, but that was all that their instruments, like the violins and violas, could stand pressure-wise when tuning up the strings. If they try to tune it to a higher frequencies, the instruments would literally just snap. So there's like long debates about this, like, hey, how did this composer decide to write it in 415 or 430 or whatever? And there's old interviews basically saying that's what my instrument can do.
Yeah, because it was all like animal intestines, like strung out and things.
Oh, yeah.
Just that, you know, it wasn't these like nylon and steel strings that we have today that are just can like hold up a car, you know, like.
Yeah, it was sheep gut.
Yeah, sheep gut.
That's interesting. They spear the animal, cooks it up, and hey, mom, give me that. Give me the intestines. I'm using it.
My old world island Italian grandfather does that too. He'll eat the whole waste nothing.
Well, Native Americans, that's what they eat.
For survival.
Yeah, that's what we did, you know. So,
well, this has been fabulous. Oh my gosh.
What do we want to wrap up with? I think we did. You guys have anything to finish? Want to end with and say?
I think one important thing to reiterate, and Victor definitely touched on this previously, is that, you know, music is something that transcends language. You don't have to understand it, and you don't have to mentalize or to understand scientifically what it is in order for it to affect you. And you don't have to be a musician or a trained performer either to really understand how it impacts you. But when we go out there in the world and we hear sounds and we realize how it impacts us and our hearts, that right there, that simple little emotion is something that anybody can share. So if you find a piece of music, a ballad, a song, a concerto, anything that really touches your heart, that's something that you can share with other people. And that song could be something that literally changes that person's life and you wouldn't even realize it. Because that
can
song,
save their life.
Right. That song is kind of like an audio olive branch. And when that person hears it for the first time, that could be the moment where they realize, wow, I didn't realize this before, but I'm not alone in my experience. And for the people out there that might feel lost or abandoned, or if their world is falling apart and they're trying to come back to balance, sometimes finding that one song is all that it takes.
Right. Yeah, that's important. That's beautiful, Bob.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
Powerful. And I know, Bob, you've got bobmackomusic.com, but I know Victor will be putting the links below how people can contact
I'll get all
you
the
and
links.
Victor.
I'll get all the links for everything.
Yeah.
And
So
also, so you'll add everything below.
Yep.
For all the talents that you both possess.
wow. We are so blessed to have both of you in the same
Yeah,
room
this
here.
was great. This was fun.
I had a blast.
Thank you for the invite.
Yeah.
Thank you again. Oh my God, you
Coming
two
and
are
joining,
so.
because I know you both are so busy. But as we always ask everybody, please, subscribe below, leave comments, tell us what you like, whatever.
Share. Share this.
Share. Tell us how music has affected you in your lives and stories about it. We'd love to hear that. And as always, remember to be the beautiful beacons of light that you are and shine it out to the world, because we need it. And I always say, do this. That changes people. And, come here. We're here every Wednesday at 11 o'clock. Every Wednesday. The first Wednesday of the month, I do the prayer healing meditation. So just join us. What else, my beautiful co-host?
Oh my gosh. Well, you've said it all. And these two incredible geniuses have just blessed us. So thank you again, all of you. What an
Happy to be
incredible
here.
episode this is. Yes.
You guys.
Great way to start a new
Thanks
year.
so much for having us.
Yes. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Yeah.